Welcome to our first video in the series of MTG Jank EDH deck tech series. Oh yeah. So today, we're going to share one of my original deck lists with you. So this series is all about sharing original deck lists. I've tested them on MTGO and casual rooms. I host them in, say, casual, typically with 4 players. And they're very affordable on Magic the Gathering Online and ready to play. So you can go to a bot and buy the deck list and play immediately. So I don't know if you recognize this picture, but this is who this deck is focused on. This is Grozoth. It's a 9 mana, triple blue, 9/9 Leviathan from the original Ravnica block. It has Defender, so it can't attack. And when it comes into play, you can search your library for any number of cards with CMC 9, reveal them, and put them into your hand. And then if you do, you shuffle your library. And you can pay 4 so it loses Defender. You can also transmute it, so for 2 blue and 1, you can discard it from your hand to search your deck for 1 card with CMC 9 and put it into your hand. So it can also be a CMC 9 tutor for 3 mana. But in our deck, we really want to put this into play. So you may notice this creature is not a legendary creature, so we can't have Grozoth as our commander. But what are we doing? What are we doing with Grozoth? We really want Grozoth to enter the battlefield. So the goal of this deck is we want that trigger to happen when Grozoth enters the battlefield. When Grozoth does this, we can draw every 9 mana card in your deck. So in this deck list, that's 21 cards. So worst comes to worst, we can pay 9 to draw 21 cards. So that is a very efficient deal, right? And it's just awesome. Like, who doesn't want to draw 21 cards? And after we draw all those cards, we can play our fun, expensive cards for the rest of the game. So really our goal, we want to play Grozoth, get all of our janky, expensive 9 CMC cards, and then we can basically have our pick of the litter. You can choose what you want to play. So what if we want to cast 9 drops sooner? We have cheaty cards, so these are cards that allow us to cheat to cast them. We have ramp, just traditional ramp spells, increase our lands, artifacts, etc. And maybe we have some combos. So maybe you know this lady in the back. We're going to talk about our cheaty cards. So these are cards that let you cast your 9 drops or expensive cards without paying their mana cost. We are running 11 of them. So here's 2 of our first cheaty cards. These are the fair cheaty cards. So these are the most fair ones that we have. Our first is Joyra of the Gitu. She's a legendary 2/2 for 3 mana. And she has a activated ability where we can pay 2 and exile a non-land card from our hand and put 4 time counters on the card. And then it suspends. So basically, when the last time counter is removed, we can cast that card without paying its mana cost. So this is a way that we can play our 9 drops for 2 mana. But the downside is we have to wait for a suspend 4. So that means we have to wait, I think, 3 or 4 more turns in order to play the card. So to me, that's a very fair cheaty card. It's cheaty because we're not paying 9 mana, but it's fair because we can't cast it for 3 or 4 turns. Omnius Spell Adept is also another fair cheaty card. It's 5 mana 3/4, and you can pay blue and 2 and tap it to cast an instant or sorcery card from our hand without paying its mana cost. So we have a few, I think, I believe 6 instant and sorcery cards in our deck with converted mana cost 9. So this can be a way that we can save 6 mana on any of these spells. And it can be very efficient, but it's very fair because we have to pay 5. So really we're paying 8 total, the 5 plus the 3, to play our 9 drops. So that's not a great value. Like this card, it can also die to removal, so it's not great. Whereas with Joyra of the Gitu, even if Joyra dies, we've already suspended the card, so it's fine. Next we have our ultimate cheaty. So these are all ultimatums from Myojin that allow us to, play or put into play our 9 drops. So they're all very efficient for only 7 mana. Genesis, we look at the top 5, put any permanents into play, and we draw the rest. So any of our creatures that are 9 drops just get slammed into play with Genesis. Eerie Ultimatum, we put any number of permanent cards with different names from our graveyard to the battlefield. This format is EDH, so each card has a different name, aside from our basic lands, of course. So any of our 9 drops in our graveyard, this is a great way to get them back. This is some great recursion. An Immersion Ultimatum is a tutor that allows us to get Grozoth and 2 other cards. And depending on what the opponent does, the opponent probably doesn't know our deck list. So when I deck tested this deck, I was able to have Grozoth enter the battlefield using Immersion Ultimatum. And because the other spells are so powerful, that Grozoth is going to look really weak compared to them. So I think the opponent is going to be coerced into picking Grozoth if you choose correctly with Immersion Ultimatum. Otherwise, I mean, you still get incredible value, like 18, CMC of value, because you just pick 3 9-drops with this. So, okay, we also have our Cheaty Pipers. Now, you might know Elvish Piper is a very classic Magic card, and the effect is you can tap it with a green and put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So we have the original, Elvish Piper, and we also have Champion of Ronos, which does the same thing, except you have to attack with it and exert it. So it does also allow us to cheat a creature into play. So both of these can allow us to have a 9-drop enter the battlefield a lot quicker than paying the 9 mana. We also have some Cheaty Chaos. So these are cards that allow us to cast our big spells, creatures or non-creature spells, any of our 9-drops, but the problem is that we don't really have control of these cards, so we don't know how powerful they are going to be. So for example, Mind's Desire, we just shuffle our library and exile the top card, and we can play that card. So you could get a Forest, or you could get a 9-drop, which is really great in our deck. Wild Evocation is similar, except it's each player's upkeep. They reveal a card at random from their hand, and then if it's a land card, they put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, the player casts it without paying its mana cost. So this is a group hug card, but it's especially great in our deck because so many of our cards cost 9 mana. So it's very likely that we can get some value out of this because those cards are probably going to be stuck in our hand anyways. So we have a much greater chance of playing some really expensive card than our opponent does, most likely, because our deck has a really high mana curve. Possibility Storm, whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, that player exiles it, and then exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a card. This shares a card type with it. That player may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then he or she puts all cards exiled with Possibility Storm on the bottom of his or her library in a random order. So similar to Wild Evocation, this effect is for everyone, and it's for all spells. So this can backfire, but it can also be really great because we can play an Elvish Piper and suddenly get a 9-mana creature out of it. So it allows us to, cheat into some of our higher cards, but we don't have control over what we're getting. So this is a very chaotic card, and it's a lot of fun. It just completely changes the game. Unexpected Results is similar to Mind's Desire. We shuffle our library, then reveal a top card of our library. If it's a non-land card, we can cast it without paying its mana cost. So if we get any of our 9-drops, we basically get to play it for 4 mana. So that is awesome. But if it's a land card, you can put it onto the battlefield and then return Unexpected Results to our hand. So it can be a 4-mana Rampant Growth, but at least we can try again with it. So this card's really fun. Like, so much of our deck is just high, big creatures, so who knows what we can get with it. So these cards that all make this deck have a lot of flavor. Next is our Ramp package. So Ramp are cards that add mana value through lands, mana rocks, or cost reduction. So here's our Artifact Ramp. So Traveler's Amulet isn't actually ramp, it's fixing, but it's included here because it's an artifact. So we can sack it and search our deck for a basic land card and put it into our hand. So this is just fixing. We're playing 5-color deck. This can be very useful. Wayfarer's Bauble, we pay 1 to play it, and then 2 to sack it. We can search for our deck for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So this is a Rampant Growth in an artifact. So even if we don't have green available, this allows us to ramp on turn 2 and fix our colors as well. And Chromatic Lantern, probably one of my favorite artifacts. It gives all your lands the ability to add 1 mana of any color, and it itself taps for 1 mana of any color. So now all of our lands, no matter what they are, can help play any of our cards in our 5-color deck. So yeah, definitely an all-star. Next we have our land ramp. So Here we have Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. They're the same thing, except Kodama's Reach is an arcane spell. But they both search for 2 basic lands. One goes into play tapped, other goes into our hand. We're also running Migration Path, which searches for 2 basic lands and just puts them both into play. It also has Cycling, but that's not really that relevant. Then next we have our cost reduction. So here we're running Dream Devourer, which gives each non-land card in our hand Foretell. So Foretell allows us to pay 2 to exile it, and then on a later turn we can play the card for 2 mana less for its Foretell cost. And whenever we foretell a card, it gets +2/+0. So if we foretell a card, then it becomes a 2/3, and we can attack with it if we want. So this card allows us to turn our 9 drops into 7 drops, so it can be helpful. Fist of Suns, we can play Wooburg to pay the mana cost for spells that we cast. So this is great because all of our 9 drops now cost 5 if we have Wooburg. So with our Chromatic Lantern, for example, we just have 5 mana of any lands, and we can play any of our spells. So Fist of Suns is, reduces our cards by 4 CMC. So this is a really great card. We also have a combo here, right? Commander ramp. Our commander is Jegantha the Wellspring. So Jegantha is a 5 mana 5/5, and it can tap to produce Wooburg. But the downside is that this mana can't be spent to pay generic mana costs. So it can't be spent to pay Fist of Suns, for example, because that has 3 colorless. So that white mana in Jegantha can only be used to pay for that white mana. So the combo here is with Fist of Suns, we can pay Wooburg instead of pay the mana cost. So now when we want to play, we tap Jegantha to add the 5. When we want to play a card like Suncrusher, there's a 9 mana 3/3 with Sunburst. Now we can tap Jegantha and use Jegantha's mana to pay for Suncrusher, even though it is colorless in its mana cost because of the activated ability of Fist of Suns. Well, not activated, but just the static ability. So basically we can pay 5 mana and we'll have an 8/8 Suncrusher. And Suncrusher is really janky. It can remove counters, destroy a creature, and we can also remove a counter to return it to our hand. So it's very bad because it's very overcosted, and you have to do the Sunburst, which is hard anyways. And Jegantha is not going to work with it unless we have a card like Fist of Suns. So we're really not going to be able to get this cheated out into play easily. It could also work for Artisan of Koza. Like, this is also another colorless card, but with Fist of Suns, we can pay Wooburg and pay it. So these are just 2 examples of some 9 drops in our deck that we could run out using Jegantha and Fist of Suns. It turns any of our 9 drops into a 5 mana spell, so it's really fun. Next, we have the Bringer. So you may or may not know the cycle. This is from 5th Dawn, but basically, here's Jegantha again. Jegantha comes up, taps to Wooburg, and we can play any of these. So all of these Bringers have this ability that we can pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost. So, all of these cost 9 mana, so they can all be tutored with Grozoth, of course. But if we draw any of them naturally, and we play our commander, Jegantha, then we can just tap Jegantha and play it. So, typically by turn 5 or 6, we can get one of these into play if it's in our hand, and, there's 5 of them, and we're playing a 100-card deck, so, not bad. And they all have upkeep abilities, which, vary in strength. The Bringer of Green Dawn produces a 3/3 green beast. Bringer of the Red Dawn can threaten a creature, gain control of it, and can attack. Bringer of the Black Dawn is probably the most powerful. It's a tutor and upkeep that we put on top, and we pay 2 life. Bringer of the White Dawn can reanimate artifacts from our graveyard. And Bringer of the Blue Dawn is some card draw. It gives us 2 cards each turn during our upkeep. So all of these are really fun. I've always really liked the cycle. I don't think they're broken or anything, but they're really fun, and it's great that we can search for them and play them in this deck. So here's the Bringer of the White Dawn. This one focuses on the artifacts. And these were some of our artifacts that we talked about earlier. So with Traveler's Amulet and Wayfarer's Bauble, these are both sacrificial artifacts. So they will probably be in our graveyard if we've drawn them in the game. So Bringer of the White Dawn should have a target or 2 to bring back. Let's review our ramp. So we had 8 ramp cards, 11 cheaty cards, our ramp commander, lol, and that's a total of 20 ramp cards. So normally you might be playing 10 or 12 ramp cards, right? But in this deck, with all of our cheaty cards and our commander, these 9 drops, we're going to be playing stuff. So you can count on that. So next we have the 9 drops. This is the exciting part. We draw all of them when Grozoth enters play. 19 creature spells. This includes Grozoth, and 6 non-creature spells. So we can draw 25 cards when we play Grozoth. That's just awesome. So here they are. These are the 9-drop creatures in the entirety. So we're going to go over them piece by piece. We already went over the bringers, but you can see we have a lot of options here. This is the fat. These are just big, chunky creatures. This is just like the fun. This is what, the type of jank we want to be playing. We have Titania through X, which is an 11/11 trample. It also has cycling, can give a trample counter, so that can be useful. Thing from the Deep is a 9/9, and whenever it attacks, we sacrifice an island. But you'll notice that it has amazing art. We also have Crows and Colossus, which is another 9/9. It also has Morph, so maybe some of these cards might be relevant earlier, but you don't want to be playing them earlier. This is just fat. We have Inkwell Leviathan. It has Island Walk, Trample, and Shroud. So this is just a big booty. Probably the best of the fat is Zakama, Primal Calamity. And this is a 9/9 legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, Vigilance, Reach, Trample. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you untap all lands you control. So if you're able to pay its mana cost and play it from your hand, not cheat it into play, and actually some of our cheating effects, like Mind's Desire, allow you to cast the card. So if you do end up casting Zakama from Joyra or Mind's Desire, you will get that trigger, because it doesn't say from your hand. So that is awesome. You're going to be able to untap all your lands, like, kind of for free if you're able to cheat it. And it has all these activated abilities which are powerful. You can kill creatures, you can destroy artifacts and enchantments, and you can gain life. So it's a very flexible card, probably our strongest fat booty to do some work. Next we have our Graveyard Recursion cards. So we talked about Bringer of the White Dawn before, getting back artifacts. We also have Artisan of Kozilek. When we cast it, we can zombify a creature from our graveyard, so we can bring back something. And as you can see by all these 9 drops, we have a lot of fat creatures we can bring back. We're also playing the Unspeakable. So this, whenever it deals combat damage to the player, we can bring back an Arcane card. So we have a few Arcane cards. We'll go over those later. We also are running Rhea Dawnbringer. This is just a fun angel. There's 4/6 flying, so for 9, that's pretty bad, compared to like Artisan of Kozilek, which is a 10/9. But it has this great ability during our upkeep that we can return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So every turn, if Rhea Dawnbringer is on the battlefield, we can bring back one of our fatties from the graveyard. So that's really fun, and yeah. So these are our OP big boys. So all these cards are just really, really strong. We have Bringer of Black Dawn. We talked about that tutor effect. So if we don't have Grozoth, we can play this and get Grozoth, or we can get any card we want from our deck to kind of deal with the board, right? We talked about Zakama. Zakama is just very overpowered. If we're at 9 mana, we can play it, untap all our lands, and play another 9-drop after, or activate its abilities. Just really, the amount of value you get from Zakama is really, really strong. We're also running Blazing Archon, which is hilarious. It has this great text on it. Creatures can't attack you. So if your opponents are planning to beat you by combat damage, then when you're able to throw this on the battlefield, there's nothing they can do until they get rid of it. So just, yeah, you will be on the attack when you have this card out. We're also running Kuro Pitlord. It has a terrible upkeep ability. You have to play 4 black mana, so most likely you won't be paying the upkeep ability. We're really running it for its second ability, which is pay 1 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So what you're able to do with this is, if you're able to get it on the battlefield, before your upkeep, before you have to sacrifice it, at any time you can kill creatures by paying life. So this is really awesome, because if there's some creature that has some ability or that you need to get rid of, and you can also do it in response. So it's just very flexible removal that takes away your life, which is a resource, but at the same time, with the creatures that we're running, you're probably going to be winning in 1 or 2 turns once you have some 9 drops out with Grozoth. And next is Myojin of Life's Web, and this card needs its own combo time discussion. So Grozoth, right, comes into play. We can search our deck for any number of cards that have converted mana cost 9 and put them into our hand. So we got our 26 cards, right, with Grozoth. Next, so when we play Grozoth, we search for Myojin of Life's Web. So this card will be in our hand. So our next step is we want to cast Myojin of Life's Web on the next turn. And Myojin of Life's Web is a 8/8 legendary creature spirit. When it comes into play, it has a divinity counter on it if we played it from our hand. So if we can't cheat this in with Mind's Desire or the other effects, because it won't have the divinity counter. So it's very important that we get lucky and we can play Grozoth first, because if Myojin of Life's Web is already in play, we're not going to have that counter. Now, Myojin of Life's Web is indestructible as long as it has a counter, and it has an activate ability that we can remove the divinity counter, and when we do, we can put any number of creature cards from your hand into play. So this is really a combo. We play Grozoth, and then we tutor for Myojin of Life's Web and our other 24 9 drops. We play Myojin of Life's Web, and at any time, before our next turn, we remove the counter, we put all of our other creatures into play, and then the following turn, we can swing with all of our 9 drops. So this is kind of like a 3-turn combo. We play Grozoth, turn 1, we play Myojin, turn 2, turn 3, you attack with all of your fat and all your creatures, all of your 9 drops. So it's really fun. I was able to do this while testing the deck and ended up winning my 4-player match from this alone. So yeah, really, really strong. And that's kind of what made this deck so much fun, and why I wanted to share it is because you're able to just put all of this jank into play. Like whatever 9-drop you want to put in your deck, using this combo, you can run it out there. So it's super fun. So another way to activate Grozoth, right? If you look at Grozoth, its ability is when it comes into play. So we don't actually need to cast it. So another way to cheat it out is using this card Surprise Deployment. Now, it's a 4-mana instant from Plane Shift, and you can only play it during combat, but you put a non-white creature card from your hand into play, then at the end of the turn, you return that card to your hand. So this allows us to play Grozoth from my hand and get that ETB effect and draw those 20-plus cards for just 4 mana, which is great. The issue is you have to have them both in hand, so Surprise Deployment could still be useful because you have all these other 9-drops, so just throwing in a blocker, and maybe you'll have some other enter the battlefield ability, but like Kuro, for example, with the -1 life, like -1/-1 to a creature, like that can be useful. So there's a few other cards that this pairs well with, but mostly we're just trying to cheat Grozoth into play so we can get a combo going. 9-drop spells. So we went over our creatures, but Grozoth, if you look at Grozoth, also searches for cards. They can be any cards. They don't have to be creatures. So we are also searching for some non-creature spells. So here they are. We have In Garrick's Wake. It destroys all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. Decree of Savagery. Put 4 1/1 counters on each creature you control. This is an instant, so we can do it after they declare blockers, so that's pretty fun. Also have Cycling for 6, and we can put 4 1/1 counters on a creature. We also have Searing Wind, which is 9 mana to deal 10 damage to a creature or player. So this actually was pretty helpful in one of my games because if the player has some way to stop you from attacking, this is a way just to shoot him in the face for 10. So it's actually really rewarding to play Searing Wind. We also have Heroes Remembered, which you just gain 20 life. And you might notice playing this deck that a lot of players will try to kill you. So gaining 20 life is a great way to kind of stabilize after you've played Grozoth, because they see that you've drawn these 20 cards. So this is a way that, you can kind of stay in the game. We're also running Blasphemous Act, and this card is super great because it has a mana cost of 9, so we can tutor for it, but it costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. And what Blasphemous Act does is it deals 13 damage to each creature. So let's say you play your Grozoth and all your opponents have all these creatures. It's possible to just play Blasphemous Act immediately after you tutor it. So for 10 mana, or the cheating cost of Grozoth plus a red, because there's usually 8 creatures on the battlefield, you're able to clear the board and kind of, unless they have some hasty threats, like have the turn to stabilize to play the Life's Web and then get all your creatures on the board. So yeah, I really like Blasphemous Act. It's probably the best board wipe in the deck. We also have Plague Wind, which is very similar to in Garrick's Wake, except it only destroys all creatures you don't control, but they can't be regenerated. So the creatures from in Garrick's Wake can be regenerated, but Plague Wind, no regeneration. So another subset of cards we have in this deck are cards that care about mana value, or that really care about our high mana value spells. So let's look at some of them. First, we have Double Vision and Sunbird's Invocation. So Double Vision, just whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you copy it. So this is great for ultimatums, for example, but also any of those 9-drops that we went over. Like, this is a great card because it just casts a copy of it. So if we're playing a 7 or 9 mana instant or sorcery spell, we get another 7 or 9 mana instant or sorcery spell. So for just 5 mana, this will quickly give us a ton of value. Another card is Sunbird's Invocation. So I haven't had experience playing this in this deck necessarily, but I've played it in a lot of others. And the concept is kind of similar. Like, if we play a 9-drop, then we search our deck for a card with 8 mana or less, and we can play it. Among the top X cards. So let's say we play an Ultimatum, which costs 7. Then we reveal a top 7, and then we can play a spell with mana value 7 or less from among them without paying its mana cost and put the rest on the bottom. So this is a way that we can turn our 9 mana spell into 2 9 mana spells, or our 7 mana spell into 2 7 mana spells, because we have a lot of high cost spells in our deck. So both of these spells give us a lot of value. So these are some more cards that have to do with mana value. We have Vengeful Rebirth. So this brings back a card from our graveyard to our hand. And when we do, we deal damage equal to its mana cost to any target. And similar to Searing Wind, which is like 9 mana, deal 10 damage, this is like 6 mana, deal 9 damage, because we have so many 9-drops that we can return. So we will basically, this will be a reliable 6 mana, deal 9 damage to a creature or player spell. And we get to draw that card from returning it from our battlefield to our hand. So I think this card is really fun. We're also running Drownu's Pet, which is just complete jank in my opinion, but basically it's a 3 mana 2/2, but it has Kicker for a black and 2, and we can discard a creature card from our hand. When we do, it has Flying and comes into play with X/1/1 counters, where X is the discarded card's converted mana cost. So in our deck, we will be discarding a 9 mana card, and it will become a 11/11 flyer for 6 mana. So that is pretty sweet, right? And just look at that art. That art is awesome. Next, we also have Disaster Radius, and this is 7 mana, red sorcery. And in order to play it, we have to reveal a creature card from our hand. So we don't have to discard a creature, we just have to reveal. What it does is it deals X damage to each creature your opponents control, where X is the revealed card's converted mana cost. So basically, for 7 mana, we can deal 9 damage to all of our opponents' creatures. So we will most likely have a 9 mana creature in our hand. So this card will be very effective at clearing all of our opponents' boards, similar to the board wipes, similar to Plague Wind in Garrick's Wake, except it costs 7 mana. So we can play it a lot sooner than those 9 mana wraths. Next, these are some more cards that deal with mana value. With Favor of the Mighty, each creature with the highest converted mana cost has protection from all colors. So in our deck, all of our creatures cost 9, right? So unless an opponent is playing a 10 mana cost creature, that means all of our 9-drops are going to have protection from all colors. That is insane. That means they're all unblockable and can't be targeted by anything unless it's a colorless spell or like a board wipe that doesn't target any of them. So Favor of the Mighty, I think, is super fun, and it only costs 2 mana. So the downside is that, until we have our 9-drops online, the opponents are probably going to benefit from this card. And if they're able to Cyclonic Rift our stuff, then, there's not really much we can do about that. But we're also running Baneful Omen, which is just a card that deals damage to each of our opponents equal to the mana cost of the card on top of our deck. So this happens during our end step. So for 7 mana, we play it, then at the end step, it triggers. We reveal the top card, and depending on what it is, we deal its mana cost to each of our opponents. So we have so many 9-drops that this is really fun in our deck, because basically it's possible to deal 9 damage to each of our opponents, every turn if we get lucky enough. So it's just a fun card. Also running Spring Cleaning. This destroys 1 enchantment, but we clash with an opponent, and if we have one of our costly spells on top, then we destroy all enchantments my opponent's control. So not just that player, but your opponents, right? So all the enchantments that you don't control will get destroyed. So this is, an asymmetrical effect that is great because we're running a few enchantments like Favor of the Mighty and Baneful Omen. So having a card that doesn't kill ours, like Tranquility would, right, can be very helpful. Another really fun card is Kaboom. So this is a 5-mana sorcery. We choose any number of players. So basically, we choose each of our opponents. Then we reveal cards from the top of our library until you reveal a non-land card. Kaboom deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to that player. Then we put the revealed cards on the bottom of our library in any order. So similar to Baneful Omen, basically Kaboom triggers Baneful Omen for 3 random cards to each of our opponents. So it like triggers it 3 times, if that makes sense. It's kind of like going through it Baneful Omen once for 5 mana. So it's a much, much worse Baneful Omen. But it is only 5 mana, and you can get lucky and deal 9 damage to someone, so it's fun. So next we have Arcane. So this is something that I brought up, just hinted at when the Unspeakable was showed in our creature pile. So if we look at the Unspeakable, it's a 9 mana 6/7, deals combat damage to a player. We can return an Arcane card from your graveyard to your hand. So what Arcane cards are in our deck? Well, we're running 3 of them, so not that many options. But, it's only 1 card, but it's just good to have a few options just in case. We have Choice of Damnation. This is kind of a pet card of mine that I like to throw in decks sometimes. You only cannot target one opponent with it, unfortunately, so you can't target all of your opponents, but it's really great when you're just left like in the 1v1 with the last opponent. But you choose a number, or a target opponent chooses a number. Then you may have that player lose that much life. If you don't, that player sacrifices all but that many permanents. So if they choose a low number, then you have them sacrifice all but that many permanents. If they choose a high number, then they lose that much life. And in EDH and Commander, players get a lot of permanents like later in the game. So on turn 8 or 9, Choice of Damnation like kills like 5 or 6 things, or you deal like 8 or 9 damage. Like this card is fun. And with the Unspeakable, it's possible to get it back. So not very likely because, there are only 2 cards out of our 100 card deck, right, out of our 99. But still, it's really fun combo and very janky. We're also running Rend Flesh, just a removal option, destroys a non-spirit creature, and Kodama's Reach, which we brought up before. So this is the rest of the jank. So we're running Ghostly Prison, just helps you not die before you, slows down people from attacking you. So really helpful, just powerful card. Factor Fiction, just efficient card draw. It also mills you, and as you saw with Eerie Ultimatum, we have and our Reanimator cards. This can be actually useful later in the game as well, because putting stuff in our graveyard can be beneficial for our deck. Lightning Greaves just protects our Jegantha, so we can add mana, and it can give things haste, like the Unspeakable, for example, that really want it. I'm also running Guided Passage. Now this card, it's a tutor technically, but you don't get to choose what you're tutoring for. So you reveal your whole library, and you choose an opponent, and the opponent chooses a creature, a land, a non-creature, and a non-land card, and you draw this card. So the card draw, you're paying 3 mana, and you get 4 cards. That is awesome, right? The downside is that you don't get to choose any of those cards. The opponent does. So these should be technically the worst of each of these card types from your deck. But maybe if your opponent wants to help you out, this card is very, very broken because it's actually a 3 mana tutor for 4 cards. And most of the time, you're going to get a basic land, some probably just 9 drops with this card, to be honest, because how are you going to cast them, right? So they're just going to give you a bunch of stuff. And so it's fun. And you can also show your opponent your deck, and they'll be like, what the hell is this? So lands, onto the final part of our journey. Fixing. So, we're playing 5 colors, Jegantha. So these are just cards that help us fix and play whatever cards we want to play. So we have Command Tower, adds any color in our commander color identity. So although Jegantha is hybrid red-green, this does tap for any color because it's identity. World Tree, this is probably one of my favorite cards that's been printed recently. Once we have 6 lands, which is very easy in our deck, all of our lands can tap for any mana of any color. So this has the Chromatic Lantern effect, but on a land. So just having that more redundancy from that is amazing. And Path of Ancestry comes into play tapped, but adds 1 mana of any color in your commander color's identity. And when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares creature type with it, we scry 1. So in our deck, we don't have any other creatures that share Jegantha's type. I'm pretty sure we don't. I haven't experienced that, but basically, if we have this and we play Jegantha, we get to scry 1. Otherwise, it just taps for any color mana. So just fixing. We're also running all of the tri-lands. So all of these lands come into play tapped and add for 3 different colors of mana. So this is kind of like budget options, but they're all very flexible. So just they will cover your base, and you won't really have to worry. Even if we're playing an ultimatum or something, like they provide 3 out of our 5 colors. So they're all very, very beneficial for us. Next, we have ramp. So these are lands that help ramp. So although we already have a ton of ramp and cheaty ways, why not have more? We're running Blighted Woodland, Temple of False God, and Crows and Verge. So Blighted Woodland and Crows and Verge both search for 2 lands and put them into play. So both of them net you 1 more mana. And Temple of the False God, when you tap it, it adds 2 mana, but you can only tap it if you control 5 or more lands. So this is a dead land until we have 5 or more. So basically on turns like 1, 2, and 3, like this land is useless. So if you see it in your opening hand, consider it, don't count it as land in your mulligan decisions. Otherwise, this will help us play our 9-drops much quicker. So I've always been a huge fan of Temple of the False God. Now this is probably the best land in our deck, Reliquary Tower. You have no maximum hand size and taps for colorless. So you might be thinking, why are you playing a land that taps for colorless in a 5-color deck, right? Well, this land gives you no maximum hand size. And what does Grozoth do? It draws you 20 plus cards. So if you don't have this when you play Grozoth, you're going to have to discard to your hand size. And that is the worst. That is just awful. So you really, really want this. And I might even have to revise this deck just so that we can reliably get Reliquary Tower more. Because I'm sure this deck, it just feels so bad if you play Grozoth and then discard all of your 9-drops before you can play Myojin of Life's Web. So yeah, you really, really want this in play before you play your Grozoth, if possible. Next, we have some powerful lands. So these are cards that you can cut if you're on a budget, but for the most part, they're really just fun to add power to the deck. So Bajuka Bog exiles a player's graveyard. So there's so many graveyard synergies running amok in EDH that just having one in your deck to just hose a player is the best feeling ever. Next, we're also running Core Haven. This adds colorless, but you can also pay 1 in colorless, 1 in white mana to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by target attacking creature this turn. So this is like a Maze of Ith, but it also adds mana. So you don't have to worry about missing that land drop because you're playing Maze of Ith. Next, we're also running Field of the Dead. So this is a 5-color deck, so there are even the basics, that's 5 different names of basics, right? So this is just like a one of, you can take it out if you don't have the budget. Obviously, it's like $20 or whatever, but, it just gives you zombies and value from a land drop. Like, that's amazing. And, some of these cards, like Core Haven and Field of the Dead, might add colors. But remember, we have the World Tree and Chromatic Lantern, so we have some ways so that they can actually add any color mana if we draw the right piece. And even if we don't, I feel like personally, they add enough value to the deck, just as powerful one-ofs that, why not include them? They're really fun and powerful. Last but not least, we have our basics. So we're running 4 forests, 4 islands, 4 mountains, 4 plains, and 3 swamps. So, yeah, that's been our deck tech review. It's been really fun. Thanks for checking it out. As you can see here, Jegantha is the commander. This deck in paper is $197 at the time of this recording. On an MTGO, it's only like 6 sticks, so it's very affordable. And maybe you already have some of these cards in your collection. There's a few staples like Ghostly Prison and Lightning Grip, so who knows? You can always cut the cards that you can't afford and just look for some replacements. As I think the core pieces are Grozoth, Myojin of Life's Web, Reliquary Tower. If you get those things in place, you can replace the other cards with some similar cards that have a similar function. But yeah, really, this is a really fun deck. And if you want to make it more competitive, more tutors, more ramp. If this is kind of for casual play, as you can see, there's nothing too mean, no mass land destruction or anything like that. Really, you're just trying to play your big stuff, and it's really fun. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much. I really appreciate you checking out my video. See you soon. Bye-bye.